Hello, everybody. What's going on, guys? My name is Julian, and today I am back after quite some time. And recently I think the GCE O Level 2025 G2 Social Studies has ended, and shout out and credits to Humanities Tutor TikTok over there. I have no idea how you got the thing. Okay, I don't know even how you got the question, but uh, credits to you, you got the questions. Okay, and yeah, the purpose of this video is going to be uh, explaining to you how you will approach GCE O Level Social Studies paper, and the reason why is because right, the tutors, teachers will teach you, how to answer the questions, the answer key, stuff like that. But what I'm going to teach you is how you will approach it in a student's perspective, right? It's very important, okay? Because you must, how to say, you must be in the position of the person taking the exam, okay? Right, and that's I honestly that's the best way to learn, right? You can learn the answer key and stuff like that, but it's not gonna matter. At the end of the day, it's not gonna do anything if you do not know how to approach it in an effective and efficient manner in answering some of these questions. And the first point I would like to make, right, is that do not think that the paper is easy. Okay, I think I've seen some of the forums, if I'm not mistaken, about people saying that this paper is easy, stuff like that. The paper is easy, looks easy. It's about tourism, globalization. Globalization is easy. I can assure you, okay, it's not so simple. It's like not so straightforward. It's just like okay, it's easy. The reason why I say it's not so simple is because this thing called local contextualization, right? You'll be thinking, what in the world is that? Okay, it basically means that this thing that we're talking about here has nothing related to Singapore. Literally nothing related to Singapore. Okay, this is like in another country. Okay, if I'm not mistaken, this is from Vietnam. Okay, and the reason why I say this, people say it's easy, but I say it's not so simple, is because anything outside of local contextualization is considered a bit more tricky, all right? Because you do not know anything about the country. Let me give you a really simple example. If I tell you to answer a question on right, answer a question, would you rather answer a question on Singapore's history, or would you rather answer a question based on U.S. history? Which one will you find it easier? Right? Obviously, Singapore, right? Because it's a local context, right? You have some kind of memory, of how Singapore's history came about, rather than US. US is a bit more complicated, right? Because you may know some of US history, but you do not know the the base, the general idea, right? And that's the first thing, okay? It's not so straightforward, okay? It's not so straightforward as it seems, okay? In my eyes, it's also not so simple, okay? Yeah, that's the first thing, okay? Don't treat it as it's easy, okay? Do not have an expectation, right, that it's gonna be easy. It's not, okay? It's called social studies for a reason, okay? It's not supposed to be simple, right? The second thing you gotta have is that you gotta have the right mindset, okay, when approaching this examination. I can guarantee you for sure, people will be sneezing, coughing, shaking their legs, clicking the pen, whatever the thing is. It's gonna create a noise. All right, it's gonna create a distraction, and you gotta get used to it. Okay, I cannot. You'll be cold. I don't know if you guys have aircon, but uh, I'm pretty sure you have air conditioned assembly area or something like that, right? It's gonna be cold, right? So you got to train in an environment that is noisy and cold. One of the worst combinations, I can assure you, it's one of the worst combinations, right? You'll be sneezing, coughing, people making noise, all these kinds. So you gotta be focused, right? You gotta focus your mind and tune out the distractions. Okay, that's the second point. The third point is, this is the most important one, by the way. You gotta be fast. Okay, I cannot stress this enough. You have to write fast, but you gotta make sure that the examiner, which is the Cambridge people, can read your handwriting. Okay, really, really important. They have to be able to read it. Okay, you can know how to answer the question, but if you didn't write properly, it's not gonna matter. Okay, it's literally not gonna matter. Right? If they cannot see your handwriting. All right. I've already touched on 3 points, and without further ado, let's jump right straight into how will you approach these kind of questions. All right, let's go. Okay, so first of all, the most important thing that you gotta know what chapter this is. So this is globalization. Okay, chapter 1 and 2, which is citizenship and diversity. Okay, throw it out of the way. It's not gonna matter. Okay, throw it out. Focus on globalization. So this is the first part. Okay, now moving on, you will have a series of questions. Okay, ranging from different difficulties. You have, okay, 1 2 3 4 5. Okay, you have 5 questions, right? Okay, this is my first time also seeing this. Okay, I just like screenshot here and there, try to put it inside here. All right, now most importantly, okay, this is my opinion. Okay, right, you do not have to follow in a sequential order, meaning that you don't have to do 1 2 3 4 5 in that order, right? You can do 2 3 4 5 and 1. Okay, the reason why I say this is because depending on the difficulty, right, adjust accordingly, right? But for this case, okay, right, if we read the number 5 for this case, right, number 5, you have to do it last because you have to answer all 4 questions before you do question 5. So number 5, you have no choice, you have to do it last. But for the rest, you can do 2 3 1 4 or 2 2 4 3 1, whatever the case is, right? It doesn't matter. Okay, so you can roughly guess which one is difficult. Okay, question 1 should be easy. It's 5 marks, obviously. That should be easy. Surprise. Okay, you see the surprise there. Yeah, surprise is usually more difficult. Okay, surprise is usually more difficult. Right. How reliable, how similar. Okay, the rest are quite straightforward except for the surprise. Okay, how do you know what is considered difficult? Surprise, usefulness, those are usually one of the most trickiest one compared to the rest, like similar, different, reliable, you know surprise and usefulness is usually more trickier, right? Based on what I remember in 2018, right? This is the only question 3 will be slightly difficult, right? That's why if you notice it's 6 marks only, you see, because they will expect you not to answer this properly. You see, if you look at question 2 is 7 marks and question 4 is 7 marks. See, so you try to score this, and this, and just do your best for question 3. All right, right. So after looking at the questions, the next thing you gotta do is you gotta look at this background information. Okay, but before that, you gotta read the big question. Really, really important. You gotta read the big question. Do the local people of Hoi An, okay, benefit from its status as a UNESCO World Heritage Site? Now, when you in the I'm gonna imagine in my perspective, if I'm the student looking at this, I'm gonna be thinking, oh my god, what in the world is this talking about, right? And I completely understand. Okay, you will probably have no clue. UNESCO World Heritage Site related to Vietnam, right? I'm pretty sure if you read this thing of Hoi An, I'm pretty sure, right, you have no idea where this is, right? At first, when you read the thing, you have no idea where it is, right? But in this case, right, it's Vietnam, right? So the most important thing is you gotta scan, don't read, scan the background information, right? Basically, all this is that this thing is this people of Hoi An. Hoi An is basically a place in Vietnam. That's all you need to know. Place in Vietnam, and there's this this status of the UNESCO World Heritage Site. Now, assuming you have no clue what this means at all whatsoever, right? And you read the background information and you still don't know what it means, okay? I'm gonna teach you how to understand something that you don't understand. Crazy, right? Okay. This is big right here. How do you understand something that you don't understand? Right? If you read the thing, right? World Heritage Site status means this place is important to the global community. Okay, important. Obviously, we know that it's important. That's why they give a title like this, right? Of course, it's important, but important in what sense? Now, that's the tricky part. You got to know the definition of the importance of it, right? So if we continue reading down over here, he's talking about visitors. Visitors mean tourism, right? Local people have to adapt to changes, blah blah this, blah 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 blah, and then because of this, helps to right manage the economy, the finances, right? Economic challenges, tourism, preserving culture, improvements to infrastructure such as roads and waste management, right? So basically, all this really means, like, I give you a really simple example. Singapore's Changi Airport, the what do you call it, the waterfall thing, right? Why did they build the waterfall thing? Why would they build the waterfall? Might as well just don't put a waterfall, right? It's the same concept. It's because of tourism, right? It's like a wow factor. You know what I'm saying? It's a wow factor. So it's gonna bring in tourists. The tourists will spend more in the country. So you have tourist receipts, meaning that tourists spend money, and then the economy in this country, right, will grow, especially in this place called Hoi An, because it is labeled as the UNESCO World Heritage Site, right? So this basically is just a label, and it gives you some kind of recognition, that, oh, this is something special. This place is special, right? This is like the layman terms, by the way. This place is special. Tourist comes in, tourist spends money, use the money, boost the economy, build places, build this, build that, whatever the thing is, right? So, and it's also promoting the culture, right? So that's all you need to know. Now we take a look at source A. Let's go back to the question again. Okay, how would you answer this question? What can you infer about the people of Hoi An from this source? Okay, explain your answers using details from the source. So inference basically means, in layman terms, is you're making a logical guess with a sound argument. And let me repeat it again. Inference basically means you're making a logical guess, okay, and you're trying to justify it with a sound argument, okay. When you first look at this, you'll be probably wondering what in the world is this. I have no idea what this is, right? It's okay, you don't need to know. You can't even see anyway. It's black and white. It's not gonna matter. But what you do need to take note is the timeline. Okay, you've been wondering how does the timeline relate to any of these things. So in 1994, it looks like that. Okay, like in the left side, 1994. The beginning. This is the beginning. Yeah, there's 4 pictures here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, this first picture right here, okay, is the beginning. It looks like that. Nothing. Okay, nothing crazy. The second picture is the progression of restoring the place. Okay, trying to make it look nicer, stuff like that. And this all happened in 1994. The third picture transition from the restoring part to a residence. Okay, so in the beginning, okay, plan A is like, okay, we're gonna use this as a residence. 1998, and then 2013 it became a cafe and a bar. So like, okay, let's transition from a residence to a cafe and a bar. So this is just a timeline. Okay, you can draw a timeline 1994 to 2013. Well, 2013 is known as the modern era. Okay, 1994 is the past. Okay, anything before 2000 is considered the past. Anything 2000 and into the future is called the modern era. Okay, literally the modern era. That's all you need to know. Now you'll be wondering, what can you infer about the people of Hoi An from this source? Okay, so remember, you got to look at the big question again. Very important. Do the local people benefit? Right, benefit. So imagine this: you're sitting in the examination. All right, I want you to use this label, benefit as a B, okay, and no benefit as NB. Okay, so you put here at the source here, NB or B, right? That's how you label it. Okay, so identify benefit, right? Right, benefit or not benefit, right? Obviously, it benefits, right? Because it's transitioned to a more modern look to it, right? So this is definitely a benefit. Okay, how would you answer this? You answer this based on the timeline. Okay, timeline, the timeline transition, the transition. All right, and then what's the benefit of this, right? Modern era means what? Means you try to make it more modern. People are more interested. Tourists will come in like, oh, let's try this cafe. Spends money, you know, because remember when tourists spend, money, in another country, right? Because usually we tend to spend more. You see, right? Because you got to take into account of the foreign exchange, right? The foreign exchange, right? The Vietnam currency compared to like a US dollar currency, right? US dollar is more powerful than the Vietnam currency, right? So that means what? People, the people in the US, when they come over to Vietnam, when they spend, they tend to spend more than what they think they should spend, because they have the power to spend. You see, like they have options. You see, so they usually go to more expensive places. So when they transition to this in the cafe and the bar, they can mark up prices. Okay, mark up the prices for their goods and services, right? And then try to sell to international tourists. They can get more profit, and that profit will lead to economic boost to the country, and stuff like that. So that's how you want to answer the question. Okay, done. Next, source B and C. How are they similar? Or yeah, how are they similar? Okay, B and C. Let's take a look at it. Right, B and C. Let's take a look. News site in blah blah blah. Okay, it's my first time reading this. Okay, has helped to create jobs. Boosted blah blah blah. Blah, 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 blah. Many are worried that if Hong An continues to grow unchecked, it will fall victim to its own growth. Hong An is developed too fast and is likely a bicycle without brakes. Said a former government official. Increasing number of old houses being sold or rented out to be turned into shop destroys the original structure and traditional way of life, and old house is sought after and can fetch up to tens of billions of dong. Recent study of downtown area found that 600 old houses there, 155 are commercialized. Right, so basically in B, it's really obvious. It's no benefit. Okay, no benefit. Right, that is it's a more negative thing. All right, right, right. Because if you see, it talks about the good. Okay, good, and then suddenly it becomes bad. You see, so the first line is good and great job, income, blah blah blah, becomes the label of the leading destination, blah blah blah. Uh, and you see at the after this sentence becomes a bit bad. You see, if it accelerates too fast, it will fall victim to its own growth. Now, in this like, what do you mean by this, right? Isn't it a good thing to advance rapidly, right? Stuff like that. Because you gotta understand that when you advance something rapidly and the person and the country is not able to cope with the increased acceleration, of the building of the modern era, right? They basically, in layman terms, they just cannot handle it, right? Because it involves money, right? It involves money, the culture, people's opinions, right? People's opinions matter. Okay, why is this the case? If you look at recent news, they call the Gen Z uprising. If you didn't read the news, you should read the news, by the way. There's a Gen Z uprising in the Philippines, in other countries because of corruption, right? People's opinion matter, right? It's not about just accelerating growth and money, right? If you do not care about people's opinions, they're gonna come back and bite you, right? So those things matter, right? So this is basically talking negative, okay? Now see, from an academic article, social issues, and right, blah blah blah. Hoi Nanis told me he was selling his family house. Okay, it's impossible to live here anymore. It's too noisy and crowded. With the money I get, I can build a house for myself and one for each of my children. I can also send it to study abroad. Blah blah blah. My friend, she observed there's not a single Hainanese in the streets except for vendors and waiters. Another friend reported 90% of Hainanese are involved in tourism, and we have tens of thousands of migrant workers who come to work today. Uh, Hoi An today is on the verge of becoming an overripe pineapple. Basically, this is also no benefit. Okay, both of these are negative. Okay. Now this is a bit abstract. You may be thinking, isn't it good to have more cafes, more tourist attractions, more more restaurants, more this, more that, right? Because you may be thinking all of this will boost the economy in Vietnam, you see. But you also got to realize, okay, there's a thing called the dilution of culture and heritage, right? It's called a dilution of culture and heritage. And you may be thinking, how does that affect? Right, because you got to think it in this perspective, right? Traditions, right? Why does tradition matter? Because traditions will make up the identity, right? Will make up the identity, right, of the society. Right, for this case, Singapore is multiracial, right? Multiracial country, right? They do not really have a set of their own preset traditions, right? Or culture or heritage, because it's mixed, you see. Right, the Eurasians who have it, the Indians have it, the Chinese have it, the Malays have it. They all have their own set of traditions, heritage, culture, stuff like that. But for Vietnam, right, especially in Hoi An, okay, it's more just one, right? It's a one thing. It's not like multiracial, right? Right, and then if you take into consideration tourism, Western ideology comes into the Vietnamese country, right? They have an Asian mindset, the Western ideology, and the Asian ideology, there could be a clashes, right? Clashes, noisy environment, stuff like that. So both of these are bad. Okay, it's talking about the culture. It's a bit complicated. Uh, Actually, if you're wondering, this is a bit abstract. Um, but I just want you to realize that both of these are bad, and it's talking about culture and heritage. That's all you need to know. So when you go back to the question B and C, they're similar because they're both talking about bad things, right? And then when you explain it, talk about the dilution. Okay, the dilution of the culture and heritage, because we gotta go back to the question. Okay, benefit from status of UNESCO World Heritage Site. So does it preserve the heritage and traditions, right? Obviously, the people don't feel that way, all right? And when people don't feel that way, right, they lose identity in the country. And when they lose identity in the country, right, or they're so-called isolated, indirectly isolated from society, and they care more about the tourists because the tourists are bringing the money, the people will fight back. I will guarantee you the people will fight back, right? If these things are not taken into consideration. Most important thing is that you gotta take into consideration of people's opinions, because if you don't, people will fight. I will guarantee you. Next, we're going to look at source D. So source D is saying that, are you surprised by the source? Now, surprise questions are usually more difficult, more abstract, but to simply put, I'm going to give you a very simple example. If I ask you a question that, are you surprised that Singapore cost of living is very high? Right? Yes, right? Because you're already known for so long that the cost of living is increasing, right, in Singapore. So the surprise, right, surprise questions is related to the frequency. Okay, surprise questions are related to the frequency of occurrence of people talking about it. Because if people are not talking about it, you won't feel surprised. But let's say in Singapore there are more murders and crimes compared to the US. Oh, then you will be surprised, you know, because like if you're more crimes than the US, something is wrong because US has a lot of crime, right? So you'll be surprised by the question. You'll be surprised that is that really the case? You'll be surprised because you have a preconception that Singapore is considered a very safe country. Surprise. So that's how you differentiate between surprise and not surprise. Okay. So let's take a look at source D. Okay. Okay, this is from an essay written by a Vietnamese student for a master's degree in public policy, submitted in 2008. Okay, profit from tourism is why many house owners turn their homes into shops for more modern users. Blah blah blah. The change. Blah blah blah. Ancient town looks like a shopping town. Littering, traffic congestion. Many people feel sorry for Hoi An's used to be quiet and nostalgic atmosphere. Tourism development has caused unequal income distribution for Hoi An people. Business environment is highly competitive and at times unethical. And increasing number of resorts run by international companies fills up Hoi An. Assessment Hoi is doing rather well. There are more positive and negative impacts from tourism development. Now you gotta go back to the question: are you surprised? Okay, so when you read this, okay, um, let me see. Blah 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 blah. Okay, how do you come to the conclusion if you're surprised or not surprised? Okay, surprise. There's gotta be a radical fact. There's gotta be a fact in there that like, oh my god, I did not know this thing. You know. But if you read this thing word for word, okay, don't read word for word, but I'm saying if you read word for word, okay, um, you don't really find it surprising, right? You don't really find it that surprising, you see, right? Because remember, you got to go back to the question, okay? Do the local people benefit from the status, right? And then if you read the last sentence, more positive than negatives, right? So this is beneficial, right? Wait, no, wait, sorry, wait, let me read it carefully again. Okay, you see, this is the tricky part right here. You see, the first few sentences, okay, profit from tourism is why many house owners turn their homes into shops for modern users. Okay, so that's the beneficial part, okay? You see, that's the beneficial part. So that's the first point, okay? House turn into shops means what? More money, right? This changes the image of the ancient town, blah blah blah. Right, that's the elaboration, doesn't matter. That's not a point, by the way. Ancient town looks like a shopping town. Okay, that doesn't matter. There is littering and traffic congestion. So there are 2 points here: littering and traffic congestion. 2 points, 2 points. Many people feel sorry for is just to be quiet and nostalgic. Okay, that's the elaboration, doesn't matter. Tourism development has caused unequal income distribution. That's the third point. Businesses environment is highly competitive and at times unethical. Fourth and fifth point. Increasing number of resorts run by international companies fills up. Okay, elaboration. In my assessment, Hoi An is doing rather well. There are more positive than negative impacts from tourism. Okay, after reading it carefully, you'll be surprised. Okay, why? Okay, look at the numbers here. Okay, look at the number of points. The first point talks about how turning to shops. That's only 1 point. but there are more negatives than the positive. But if you see, you're surprised because the last sentence, if you read the last sentence, there's more positive than negative. So how can that be? Makes no sense, right? Okay, how can that be, right? You're talking so much things, bad, but then, there's only one point about being good. It makes no sense, you see? It makes no sense. So there are 5 negative points versus 1 positive point. So, see, luckily I checked the thing again, eh? So you gotta, surprise questions, you gotta be really, really careful. It can be quite tricky. So you are surprised. Why? It's because of the last statement. There are more positive than negatives. But based on what he wrote in the essay, there's more negatives than positive. I mean, just count the number of positive and negatives. You just compare the number of positives and the number of negatives, and then you read the last statement. It makes no sense. You see, so you're surprised. Okay, so this is a radical fact. You see, there are more positive than negative impacts from tourism development. So that's a radical fact, because you'll be surprised because you write something, right? You write something like more bad than good, but then at the end of the whole conclusion, you say, "Oh, but in my opinion, more positive than negative." Surprise. So that's how you answer the last statement here. Okay, the last statement. Very, very tricky. Source D. Right, source E. How reliable is the source? Is evidence of the government support the local people for reliable. Right, let's take a look at it. Article published an online newspaper managed by Vietnam News, which is official state-run news. Keyword here is state-run news. What does that mean? State-run means that the government controls the news agency for this particular thing. Official state-run. Okay, keep that in mind. Making use of the families. Thanks to strong tourism, those families. He shared that most local households fund their own businesses. Artists. The ancient town is a destination for tourists where he has displayed and sold painting, blah 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 blah. To make money thanks to the government and promoting. So this is definitely beneficial. Okay, beneficial is here, non-beneficial is here. Okay, this is non-beneficial, this is beneficial. Right, now you've been thinking, how reliable is the source as evidence? Now, this is the part where it becomes a tiny bit tricky. It's not as tricky as the source D one, but it's still considered tricky. Now, you gotta have some international contextualization, okay? Not all countries, keep this in mind, okay? Not all countries have like very, very less corruption, okay? I'm just gonna be straight up frank with you. Not all countries are like, not corrupt, Right? Depending on the country, the establishment, the politics of the country, not all countries are the same, okay? And you cannot really assume because of this, okay, the money and stuff like that, the reliability in this sense, okay, you, because first of all, state run means what? It's more right wing, okay. Remember this, okay, reliability is all about right and left, and occasion the middle is called the independent. Independent means they talk about both sides, right and left, right? This is considered right wing, okay? Right wing versus left wing versus independent, okay? So this is only reliable to a certain extent for right wing, okay? Keep this in mind, right wing, right wing means what? Means they're pro government, right? And left wing is more liberal, okay? That's all you need to know, right? More government, more liberal. Liberal meaning that the ideas are usually against the government, right? Against the government. So is this considered reliable? The answer to this is that it depends. It depends, It's very tricky, It depends. Because remember, this is Vietnam. This is not Singapore, okay? You don't know the politics of Vietnam. You have no clue of the politics. They did not mention the politics of Vietnam. You don't know the corruption index in Vietnam. You have no clue about that, right? Singapore is by far one of the countries with the lowest corruption index, okay? Meaning that it's not, it's not so corrupt, right? but you don't know about Vietnam. You don't have the data, so you have no clue if the government is stable, not stable. You have no clue. You're basing everything here in an assumption, right? Just because they say good thing, tourism, more money, like that, right? Remember, this is talking about the macro factor. Macro factor means talking about big picture. But if you're talking about micro factor, it's talking about the people and the society, the heritage and the culture is not taken into consideration. Keep that in mind, it's not taken into consideration. So when you answer this question, you gotta be really, really careful. You can say it's reliable only to a certain extent. Okay? You cannot say it's reliable. That's the trap here. You cannot say it's reliable. Because you didn't read the thing, you see. It's state-run, means it's more government-oriented. But it's more state-run. It's by Vietnam, you see. Very, very important. It's not independent. If you're talking about the independent news agency, then okay, fine, independent news agency, they'll give the right wing and the left wing views. But this is more right wing, right? So they're not talking about, the other considerations, right? And if you take a look over here, it does not say a fact. Very, very important here. There is no fact being mentioned. Now you'll be thinking, okay, number of visitors is more than 5.35 million. This is not a fact. Why is this not a fact? Very, very important. You gotta understand this. A fact is only used in the form where it's like a statistics and there is a source. There's a source. So where is the source? Right, you may be thinking, okay, for this guy, this artist, I don't know what, sold his paintings. So that's an anecdotal evidence, right? It is not a statistic, right? It's not a statistic, it's not a report, it's not anything, it's not based on data, independent data collecting agencies, right? Because remember, you do not know the politics of the country, okay? You don't know the corruption index. So that's the thing you have to consider, right? Like, for example, if you go to other countries, right, and then you read the news talking everything good about the news, right? But you didn't know that the country itself is corrupt, and then you listen to everything the news say, then you'll be subjected to, reliability issues, right? Because you're easily you easily believe things, right? So that's the thing that's testing you. So the trap here is to answer it is reliable. Okay, you cannot say that it's reliable. As crazy as it sounds, you cannot say that it's reliable. You can say it's only to a certain extent that's reliable because of right-wing views, but you also have to mention of the consideration of the opposing view, which is left-wing views, culture, heritage, stuff like that, or whatever the thing is. Okay, very important. Now the last question is, how far do the sources in the study show that people benefit? Right, so you count the number of benefit, now non-benefit, and then you copy and paste everything you've done for 1, 2, 3, 4 into number 5. Okay, that's it. Let's go. Now you're going to go into the essay kind of questions. Right, the chapter is called Exploring Citizenship. Okay, throw away globalization, right, and then bring back the citizenship. Okay, throw the globalization and bring back the citizenship. Right. Basically, this thing is talking about some health program and for elderly. Okay, blah blah blah. Community support, stay connected, cap for blah blah blah. Okay. Right. Important role government is to maintain law and order. Okay. Another important role of the government is to protect their country's national interests. Government agencies in diplomacy by establishing bilateral, multilateral relationships. Deterrence. Okay, straightforward. Right. So Action 1 talks about national program. Okay. In your opinion, how will supporting seniors to age well benefit Singapore? Okay, explain your answer with reference to one benefit. Explain how government contributes to good society by maintaining law and order. Okay, 7 is easy. 6 is a bit more. I would say it's a bit more tricky because you're not old yet. Yeah, if you're not old, it's pretty hard to visualize. Why the government tries to make sure seniors grow old properly. Now, the most important concept is that if you're a senior, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Yeah, we're already retired. Okay, so you gotta link the points. Okay, very important. Link points. Okay, seniors is the first point. Seniors are already what? Retired. Okay, when you're retired, you're linked to what? You have no income. You're not doing a job anymore. You're really too old to have a job. So you have no income, right? If you have no income. And what happens when you have no income? It means you have no cash flow. And then in the event that you're hospitalized, accident, unhealthy, I don't know what kind of diabetes and hypertension, cholesterol levels and stuff like that, you go to the hospital. If you go to the hospital, means what? Means the government have to take care more of you. Why is this the case? Got a link to this thing called the insurance. Okay, the government insurance. Really complicated. If you never heard about this kind of things, you have the MediShield, ElderShield, CashShield, and all the shield, right? It's a bit difficult because you have never heard about this, but if you read the news, which you should read the news on an everyday basis, you will know that the CPF, this MediShield, CashShield, ElderShield, and all these things technically help Singaporeans, right, in different stages of your life. ElderShield is one of them. ElderShield is basically long-term care insurance run by the government. That's basically it. Okay, and the whole purpose of this is to make sure that the economy is not screwed. You see, and we were thinking, okay, just how does this affect the economy? Remember, Singapore is having an aging population. If every elderly in Singapore has like some kind of illnesses, healthcare is gonna be screwed, literally screwed and cooked. There's no way for them to bounce back, you see. Because remember, hospitals are limited by ward beds, right? There's only a limited number of beds, limited amount of specialists and doctors. Right? If every senior in Singapore, right, does not take care of themselves in a healthy and financial way, right? They're gonna be screwed. See, healthcare will be screwed. Healthcare screwed means economy will be screwed, right? So that's how you answer the question. It makes sure that the economy remains stable, taking healthcare costs are managed in an appropriate manner, right? There's no volatility, in healthcare costs. Right. Question two, actually 2 and 3 talks about the good of society, maintaining law and order, protecting national interests. Right, how government contributes to the good of society by maintaining law and order and protecting national interests. So really simply, you can just reference the police force, national service, the army, the national interest. National interest basically means that in order to protect itself from international counterparts. Okay, to protect from external threats. Okay, remember you're gonna talk about internal and external. Okay, internal police, external military. Simple as that. It's an act of deterrence. I'm trying to make sure there's a wall. Okay, why do you have a boundary? Why do you have a controlled airspace? Right, the boundary of the airspace. Why do you have what land is yours, what land is not yours? That's the whole point. You see, if you do not create a barrier, anybody can just come in, come out, and then bomb here, bomb there, whatever the thing is, right? So that's how you answer question 7. Really straightforward, this one. The only difficult one is question 6. So hope you have learned a lot today. I hope you benefit a lot from this. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys do well for your social studies next year. Okay, it don't matter, but if you've already done this paper, and just accept the grades that you know just accept it. You cannot change the past. Okay, you cannot change the past. Just look forward, be positive, and yeah. And as always, if you are watching this and preparing for your next year's social studies paper, keep this in mind. Okay, keep this in mind. It is not that simple. Okay, nothing is that simple. If it's simple, all of you will get A. But in reality, there's a thing called the bell curve. Okay, people, only a certain proportion of people will get an A, and a proportion of people will get a B, and a proportion of getting a C. That's just the way the world works. Okay, not everybody can get a gold medal. That's just the way the world works. Okay, so hope you listen to this carefully, taking into the considerations of how you approach it properly, right? Uh, and as always, prepare, prepare, and prepare. But always remember to also adapt, okay? Adapt to the situation in front of you, right? Yeah. And catch you on the next video. And yeah, peace out.